Imagine this. Instead of buying dozens of regional or family-specific guides, what if you only needed to buy one book and you'd be able to look up any mammal in the world? Well, Lynx Nature Books' All the Mammals of the World is exactly that. If you're new here, I'm Doug Hitchcox. I focus this channel on niche birding videos, but this video will deviate a bit to focus on a mammal book. But let's be honest, as birders, you really can't ignore mammals, and most mammals are probably going to steal your attention when you're out birding anyways. So buckle up for a few minutes and I'll show you why you should add All the Mammals of the World to your bookshelf. Best place to start is with an unboxing. Lynx does a great job with the packaging, which I really appreciate. There is nothing more frustrating when ordering a new book than receiving it damaged from shipping, which is often the outcome from cheap online sellers that just toss the book in a universal-sized box and ship it out. Lynx packaged the book in a double-layered box, including a thick corrugated board to keep the book well padded and bump-free. And nothing preserves that new book smell of volatile organic compounds like a tight plastic wrap. Opening this thing up, we find an inserted card with quick explanations of IUCN Red List categories, how to read distribution maps, and abbreviations explained. Then on the end papers, they have all the families sorted with page numbers to quickly find them. I honestly would have preferred this to be on the insert card because the abbreviations are easy to learn, but you probably aren't going to memorize all the family page numbers. But at least these end pages are quick to get to. And let me jump to what we probably all want to see, the species accounts. This is the classic Lynx layout, well organized with order and family breaking across the page, then genus and smaller subsections outlined in gray, encapsulating all the species within. In order to get every mammal in one book, the text is pretty scarce. With the common name bolded in English, the Latin binomial, and common names in French, German, and Spanish, but each species gets plates showing distinctive sexes, morphs, or subspecies. They really didn't hold back on the art, with 7,349 illustrations covering 6,581 species. There's also a range map with an overly abbreviated explanation that will probably result in you pulling out that secret decoder ring to translate. There is a short intro chapter mostly on how to use the book, with some very detailed reference maps in the back, but they seem a little hard to use. Like, I wish that these were referenced in the species accounts, which do give the abbreviations for the country, but you need to hunt for that in these maps. Anyways, flipping through the book, it is incredible to see all the mammals like this, but before making the final recommendation if you should get this or not, it might help to compare this to other books on the market. Perhaps the obvious place to start with is where all this information come from, and that's the original Handbook to the Mammals of the World. Originally formed as Lynx Editions, which has to be best known for producing the 17-volume Handbook to the Birds of the World, they followed the success of that 20-year effort by releasing the first volume of Mammals of the World in 2009. This would take 10 years to produce, but the final 9th volume on bats coming out in 2019. These handbooks are pretty incredible for the information they hold. I don't own any of the mammal volumes, but here's a peek in volume 5 for birds as an example. Each family gets write-ups on systematics, morphology, habitat, general habits, voice, feeding, breeding, movements, and more, with stunning photos to illustrate. Then individual species accounts have those plates and maps we'll see more of, and details into their description and information specific to them. This is a good point to mention that after completing the handbooks, Lynx then produced a 2-volume illustrated checklist for both the Birds of the World in 2014, a year after the final special volume for Birds of the World, and for Mammals in 2020, again a year after finishing that series. These illustrated checklists basically drop the family chapters, and the species descriptions are narrowed down to sections on taxonomic notes and listing subspecies and distribution. Here are some of the sample pages from Lynx's website of illustrated checklists to the mammals, showing the similar information for that series. Maybe I should have mentioned this right at the beginning, but I want to be clear this video is not sponsored. I did get this book as a Christmas present from my mom, so maybe she's the sponsor of this video, but I'm certainly not being compensated for this video. In fact, I'm doing a good job losing money on these. I spent $35 on the 2 National Geographic guides I reviewed last March, and so far have made $24 off that video. Not exactly the ROI I'd hoped for, so consider helping me out by subscribing to this channel. My goal is to just make it sustainable, but it would be also nice to get this big enough that if Lynx wants to set me up with the forthcoming Handbook to the Reptiles of the World, you could do that. Before moving on, I want to point out a couple of things about the quality of these books. Lynx seems to spare no expense on producing them. Color and quality of the printing always looks perfect, at least to my eye. I did notice the paperweight of All the Mammals was lighter than what they've used in the handbooks, but I suppose they need to find cost savings somewhere to get this book down to the $114 price tag. I was a bit disappointed to have this overflow of glue on my copy of All the Mammals. I've never had an issue with any of the other books from Lynx, but this was a surprise miss for their quality control. All the pages are just stuck on the top edge, and I'll be able to scrape most of the glue off without damaging the book. But it's definitely one of those moments where I'm not angry, just disappointed. You can probably tell when you would use All the Mammals of the World based on the information it holds, and this is the time to emphasize that it is a tremendous reference book, but certainly not meant to be a field guide. I pulled a few books off my shelf for a quick comparison. Princeton has been publishing a great mammal series by Jose Costello, which is probably one of the closest to rivaling the handbooks of the mammals of the world, at least for the coverage within the species accounts. Along with this book on bovids, he also has one out on canids and one on felids and hyenas. Princeton also has a great regional guide by Kays and Wilson, but I've always been a big fan of the Kaufman guide, written by Nora Bowers, Rick Bowers, and Ken Kaufman. This is done in a familiar format for anyone who's used other books in the Kaufman line. Lastly, I'll point out another handbook, this one on the cetaceans of the world by Mark Carwadine. This again has some of the most extensive species accounts you could ask for, but they've done it in a small enough package that you could use it more like a field guide, bringing it with you on a boat trip. Even better, there's a field guide version of this coming out in just a couple weeks. So Lynx isn't the only publisher figuring out how to get us to buy the same content multiple times. With all these book reviews, I always try to think of who it's really made for. Coming in at 9.5 pounds and measuring 9.5 by 12.25 inches, it is quite the tome that you aren't going to take anywhere with you. It is a reference that you're probably only going to take off the shelf a couple times a year. I co-led a trip to Ecuador last November, primarily targeting birds, but we also had some awesome mammal encounters, including a group of night monkeys at San Isidro Lodge. Now, I don't know anything about night monkeys, and I'm not going to buy a field guide just on mammals of Ecuador, so this is the perfect book for me to go through and figure out what they were. It would have been a little less helpful in Colombia, where there are several similar species, and this does come up a bit short in really helping tell them apart. But this book is at least a great starting point for more research. I think it is a little disrespectful to call this a coffee table book, but that has to be one of my favorite uses for it. Maybe it is my bird focus side showing, but there are so many mammals that I've never heard of, and flipping through this book I can really appreciate the variability and diversity of the furry taxa around the world. There are no shortage of rodent and bat species to learn. The most dangerous thing about this book is it'll make you realize how many more books you want. I don't think I'll ever splurge on the full set of volumes, but this really makes me want to get the volume on carnivores, because who doesn't love a big cat? I hope you found this overview helpful. I'm not enough of a mammal expert to do a full review and judge how accurate all these plates are, but hopefully this glimpse inside gives you a better idea if it is the right book for your shelf, or if you're more of a field guide person. You can help me out by subscribing to this channel. I'm a couple months away from the 2-year anniversary of starting it, and getting to 4,000 subscribers would be a fun milestone for then. As always, thanks for watching.